Let's kick things off. We're just a little bit after the bottom of the hour. It's good to have you here today as part of our Rev Thoughts Daily Brief. We are just going to be here in this half-hour slot for the rest of the week and probably next week. Our idea really here is to just start a conversation with you all, hear what's going on, and really reflect what we've been listening to as part of Rev Think. We are having a lot of conversations with clients, hearing different angles and different perspectives of what's going on. So we're thankful that you're part of the community with us, that you're joining us today. And welcome, Joel. Welcome, Marcel.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, good to be here, man. Good to be back for another day of this conversation.
I see that we actually all dressed up a little bit more today than yesterday. We had a little bit longer planning than the 20 minutes we did yesterday. So pretty fun. Joel, why don't you tell people about our Slack channel, just so they know where we're doing most of our communication.
Yeah, cool. Just a quick heads up. So many of you came into this live stream by way of the Slack channel, but for those of you that don't know, we used to have a group in Facebook called the 7 Ingredients that had, I think, 567 owners from around the world in it. But for various reasons, nothing against Facebook, we decided to move that group into Slack. And that group went live a day and a half ago. And I think so far right now, the head count is 189. So here, I'll even just show you real quick for those of you that are curious. Here's my view of my Slack window. So what's really cool is there's just a whole bunch of owners from all around the world, audio companies and motion design companies, production companies. And the only requirement is that you're an owner of an established company. So we're going to curate the members here so that you know that you're speaking with your peers. And it's going to be a great place. You can see over here on the left side, we have conversations across all 7 ingredients. So we're talking about creative, we're talking about finance, we're talking about operations and sales. I mean, all these things that are on people's minds. So if you haven't jumped into that, I'll drop us a link in a second into the Zoom here. And then I guess, Tim, before I turn it back to you, I should just mention tomorrow, let's just remind everyone that we're doing another live stream, but this one's going to be a more formal presentation of this managing uncertainty topic that is kind of leading up to every day, but Thursday is the big event.
Yeah, in that conversation, we're trying to deal with direct issues. Really, we've been compiling a lot of different strategies, listening to our clients and along the Slack channel. So we want to repeat back to you questions that we've had and then present them in a strategic way for you all. So the presentation tomorrow is a little bit more formal, but please join us. It will also be recorded so you can play it back in time. Today, I want to do something unique also. The first half hour, we're just going to do what we did yesterday, have an open conversation. The topic I want to talk about is that feeling of guilt that's happening with some of us business owners. But I also want to just mention that at the 1 o'clock hour, my time, at the top of the hour, I'm going to change the format a little bit. We're going to close this conversation, and I'm going to open up a conversation specifically for those companies that do live action are having a direct effect on them. Live action's having a very different kind of issue they have to deal with because they can't go out there and do what they do for a living. So I wanted to talk to those people specifically. All are invited, but we're going to kind of change the conversation in the format a little bit at the top of the hour to deal with live action. So let's talk about this thing that's on my mind a little bit. Marcel, you and I started this conversation a couple of days ago, and the conversation, the way I want to present this a little bit is that I feel that some business owners are feeling guilt and shame in the fact that they're worried about their business. So they are at home, they're thinking about the issues they have to deal with, and they're feeling a little guilty. And then the thought that if they express it at all, that they would be shamed into believing that that shame on you, the world is, everyone's dealing with it. Why would you be selfish in doing that? So you're a business owner, this is top of the mind for you. How are you processing through some of those emotions and feelings?
Well, I think that's right. We're all feeling the same, and this is what what we were talking about, that brings us a little bit together, right? We're feeling the same thing. Everyone is feeling the worry. Everyone is like, worried about their companies, their employees, their businesses and everything. So it's okay to feel that way, because you're not alone. The problem is because we're like in quarantine. So we're thinking about like, oh, maybe it's just me, my competitor is going to survive, but they're having the same kind of thoughts too, it's like, and even your employees, I think it's in a different level, but we're all feeling the same thing, so it's okay to have that feeling of worry. It's okay to have that feeling of shame, or like, maybe I don't like to use the word shame, because I don't feel shame that much, but that's because of my personality. But I know some people might feel that way, but it's okay. I feel like we're going to get to a point that it's okay to start the negotiations, and it's okay to be strategic, it's okay to do outreaches and everything. So
yeah,
it's just part of
the thing I'm responding to a little bit is actually
what were you saying, Tim? Sorry.
Oh, my bad. I think I'm going to stop my video just for a second, because I think my bandwidth is being slowed down with the Googleplex. It feels like the Google Sheets and Google Docs has been hurting today, so I feel like Zoom might be hitting some stress too. I was just saying that what I'm responding to is just a thing I saw on BuzzFeed, and the topic, the head of the title of the article was called "The 15 People Who Are the Worst of the Worst During This Pandemic." And number 11 of these 15 worst of the worst people are heads of companies who won't give their workers paid leave, like these awesome companies. And they list these gigantic companies like Lululemon, Nike, Apple, Fossil. And I feel like, well, if whoever's posting this kind of horrendous idea must not own a business, but the thought that we actually have some real critical things to deal with, and I believe most of us are keeping production going as much as possible, moving things forward. But the thought that maybe I can't afford this for very long. I can't do this for 30 days. I can do it for 10 days, but 30 days, then what am I going to do? That's the shame I feel that is being put on our business owners.
Yeah, and I'm with you. It's the feeling, right? So there are solutions, and that's exactly what we were talking, Tim. But the first thing to know is what brings people a little bit of comfort, that everyone feels the same, So it's not bad to worry about stuff. It's okay. It's a real problem. It's the whole world. It's not just you. It's not just your company. Because when you call someone to talk about a problem and it's just your problem, let's say your company is hurting, but then I feel like, everyone would be in the same position, like about the worry feeling. So I feel like if you know that everyone feels the same, maybe it brings you a little bit of comfort. It's okay to feel that way at this point. But there are solutions, and there is like, things that we were talking about. Even like, I think and Tim, I want to send it back to you about those things that we were talking about. Can I be strategic? Is it okay to do outreach and negotiate with clients and everything? So those are the things that you can, start doing, knowing that everyone feels the same. So maybe that's time to be worried, but like, don't let the worry actually like, hit you really hard, I would say.
Yeah, that's where, really where you and I wanted to start our conversation 2 days ago is how can we be strategic about what's happening here? And it almost is like we had to have a side conversation, a little bit of like, hey, it's okay to say this, right? It's okay to start recognizing that things are going to change and we have to walk through a few scenarios. But one of the questions that we asked is like, is it okay to start reaching out to clients? And if they have
Uh-oh, we may have lost Tim. Marcel, did you lose Tim?
Yes, I did.
Shoot. Well, I think I know that you probably know the question he was asking. How do you actually reach out to a client and not do the classic, hey, do you have any work for me? Do you have any projects coming up that I can bid on? Because we all know how that is generally received.
Yeah, and I think that's what we were talking about. And it's actually, I think, for the next week or so, like let's say the next 2 weeks, me and Tim were talking about aging. Now it's time to understand the situation. Before you can offer something, maybe we all need to understand the problems that the people are having. Because we don't know from a client standpoint, they're feeling the same way. That's what I'm saying. It's not that there's like everything is okay and you're worried at home. No, they're worried too. But we need to understand what kind of problems they're facing, or even like, for example, we work with a lot of networks. How the networks will be like promoting their shows. Is it through like doing some other like recuts? Are they preparing some other stuff? So we need to understand what kind of problems they're facing so we can start offering solutions. I even said that it's important, that the offer can come after you understand the problem. So not just like, hey, what's up? Do you have something for me? No, let me understand what's going on, and then we can strategize and go back to them with a solution.
So in a nutshell, it sounds like you're just saying, first, be open, ask questions, and listen first. Listen before you start offering.
Exactly. So it's like asking questions and like, and reaching out, even like in a simple way, like, let me see how my, go-to client, how are they doing? What's the problem you guys are having? Maybe in 10 minutes, in a 10-minute conversation, maybe through an email, you can gauge a little bit. So what the problems they're facing, and then you can point your business to try to solve those problems, instead of just going there and say, hey, what's up with the new project? Do you have something for me? Because I need to work. It's like, okay, but now it's time to maybe step back a little bit and understand exactly what is going on their side as well.
Yeah, it's funny. This is almost just a good moment for all of us, because I think probably the most common question I get from studio and production company owners is, how do I follow up? What do I say? And people will, of course, they'll post on social media things like, check out our new reel, which is my most hated phrase in the English language, because it's presumptuous. And so when you reach out to somebody and you're obviously looking for work, I think people can sense it. And so you have to really practice the golden rule. You have to become very empathetic and say, okay, if I worked at a TV network right now, I'm probably terrified any day now I'm going to get laid off, maybe no severance, maybe no benefits. So how can Marcel empathize with me and relate to what I'm dealing with and maybe make me more valuable so I don't get laid off or fired? That's kind of where my head goes. But that's tricky. That requires you to think, and it requires you to really process and do your homework. What's going on at this network? What's in the news? Like I was just reading today about the upfronts are all going to be done virtually, not in person. And I thought, well, damn, if I was in the business of producing upfronts, I would be all over reaching out and saying, hey, how's it going? And what's your plan for upfronts and how are you going to deal with it?
Yeah. And I think it's a matter of like, from a business standpoint, I would check to see exactly if they have a solution already, or is there a need? Because there would be needs. I love what you're saying, like about being valuable to your client, not sounding super salesy, Yeah. So it's like, are we trying to think about solutions to like, save their jobs? Are we thinking about solutions to like, presenting us a different solution to their problems? But we need to understand what the problems are, what's the deal with the whole production, pipeline that they have. So, but maybe I think that's why I think the next 2 weeks will be important, because maybe they don't even know the answer, yet. Maybe they're only saying like, hey, first we're trying to work to, plug in our laptop and connect to the server. So it's okay. Maybe you're just prep a little bit, just wait, instead of being like, oh my God, we need some projects from you. Just wait. So people are still trying to like it's like me. I'm now, we are all set up since like, last Thursday, but I'm still dealing with like the server thing, helping people. So we're still prepping everything. And it's going to take a few days or maybe like a few weeks to have that figured.
No, I like what you're saying, Marcel, because like in a way we can bring this home and think that the new reality of, I'm sorry, my internet doesn't work, right? So my Zoom is crashing into this conversation, and I feel like, oh darn, it's supposed to be working. Or really, honestly, like the new business meeting, the one that like meeting I keep having is the one where the dogs and the kids are also participating in it. And honestly, almost the very first words that come out of the other person's mouth is, "Oh, I'm sorry." Like the dog's barking, "I'm sorry." My kids are in, "I'm sorry." And I keep thinking, like, why do you have to be sorry? Like, we're all doing this together. I get that there's a disruption in the flow of our conversation, but I almost worry about, like, how does that kid feel every time they walk in the room, probably with, one of the biggest issues that they're dealing with, which is just a kid issue. It's not huge, but it's huge for them. And we tell them, "Hey, wait, hold on." And then we turn it to somebody or say somebody, "Hey, I'm sorry." I don't want people to feel like this is their fault and they're supposed to have it perfect and all in place. This is the human experience is a little bit messy, isn't it? And it's part of what we're doing together, and we're going to figure this thing out. There might be a new norm, and there might be a benefit from the new norm, but that's some of what I feel like is happening as well. Is like, how do we, get to the other side of it?
Yeah, and I think that way too. Because we're all in this together, and we're facing the same kind of issues. Maybe the internet thing that just happened to you, like the Zoom crashing. Dude, your clients are going to be having the same kind of issue. Yeah. It's not guilty, it's not shame or anything. It's okay. We'll have to understand those kind of things. Like yesterday, I was on a call with a client. That my kid, his 4-year-old, he walks in, like asking me to do something, and I'm like, I give him a hug and I say, "Dude, can you just wait a little bit so I finish this conversation?" But I didn't say sorry. I'm like, "Hey, this is my kid," and then it's probably got another way to connect with people on a human level. It's okay. I love when I see my clients that they have the same problems I have. A 4-year-old walking in, I'm like, yes, they're having the same issue. It's like, oh my God, it's like a kid walking in or a dog barking in the background, because we always think that the clients, they live in a perfect world, and it's a lie. They're humans like you. They're having the same kind of problem. So I think the topic here about the coping with each other, it's so important because everyone is feeling the same, and it's okay.
I heard that Al Roker was doing a weather cast this morning in from his kitchen because he's like quarantining himself, and his kid walked behind him and get food out of the fridge or something like that. So like it is kind of the comic relief about it. What are you gonna say, Joel?
I was just going to raise my hand and just remind everyone that's listening in that we're definitely taking questions. So please drop comments or questions in the chat. There's also a Q&A button down below. You can see there that says Q&A. If you post that, we can get to it. So feel free to chime in. You can also raise your hand. There's a little raise your hand button, and we can draw you into the conversation so you can talk to Tim or myself or Marcel. So please jump in, or unless I'll do like I do in Jumpstart. I'll pick on people. I'll be like, "Hey, tell me what's going on in your world."
Yeah, raising their hand. You got Colin jumped right in the minute you said it. So
okay, let's get Colin in. Here we go. A lot of talk. Colin, are you there?
What's up?
There you are. Hey, man. How are you?
Terrible, like everybody else,
Well, I know you do. You do a ton of live action, and I think I saw a note from you in 7 Ingredients that said you had like 4 shoots or something, push or cancel or something. So I'm sure you're mildly freaking out, right?
I am, and I'm not. Like I'm taking emergency measures and doing layoffs, But I think we actually do. I think we'll pick up some of that and post. So I think we're just going to have to rely on that stuff. I'm just kind of getting all the money that people owe me in the door right now. So, before things shut down, I've got, $500,000 or so floating out there that I'm like, I need you guys to give me all this money now. So
Yeah, any
Yeah,
strategy that you found to be more helpful? Obviously, you don't want to piss people off in a stressful time, but you also do want to gently encourage them to pay you on time. Any advice you would give people that are doing that outreach?
The best success, so I don't know that I would be good for advice.
Okay.
Yeah, Joel.
I'm just calling people every day and reminding them, like, hey, I need your money.
And sometimes maybe that's the best policy. I mean, Tim, I know you have some strategies, but I would say you just start by having a conversation and being honest and saying, hey, what's going on and how can we help? But one thing I'll say, Colin, is I think, Tim, at the half-hour point, you're going to jump into talking all about live action production company concerns and stuff. So maybe we should back burner this for the moment.
Yeah, but Colin,
actually, my wife's calling me because there's a kid emergency apparently, so I have to go. But hopefully, I can get back on.
There you go. The new meeting. He's a perfect example. Perfect.
Well, I see a hand up from Dallas. Do you mind if I bring Dallas in? Let's get him in here.
Well, let me just say something that Colin said pretty good, is that there actually is a lot of accounts receivable sitting out there. And that is another area that you might feel guilty of saying, hey, by the way, I need that money. There's something in us as business owners that don't want to feel desperate. We don't want to ask our client for the money that they owe us. And I want to give you permission that that's okay. It's actually part of a normal business exchange. They know they owe you the money. And for you to expect it when it was due is okay. The pressure you need to put on them obviously is kind of client by client or effort by effort, but don't worry about the integrity of your business by asking for accounts receivable at this moment. It's a very legitimate concern of yours, and seal that up as much as possible.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Dallas, I think you're here with us, dude. How are you doing today?
Nope, I'm
there you are.
by the host. You hear me?
Sweet. I can hear you.
Oh, there's my face. I have my camera on. I don't know why it's not popping up. But anywho, I took the pulse a bit from some of the bigger clients, Netflix, HBO, and Turner today, just to kind of see what was going on over there. And the general consensus is that everyone's kind of business as usual as much as they can be. Netflix said that there might be a little bit of a ramp down just because of the actual amount of productivity that they can do is going down a little bit. But they really have no plans to really stop anything. They're still, working super hard. HBO has a launch of HBO Max coming up, so they actually expect to ramp up at some point, which is good because that's obviously really important. Cartoon Network, kind of the same thing. It seems like everyone's kind of just getting through it, but there's really not much of a stop on the network side as far as I'm noticing. Sam, my producer, also talked to some Discovery folks, and it's all kind of similar things. So that's good news, especially on the network front. I mean, we're in post-production, so there's we're still winding down on projects, so we haven't really seen any difference between the last couple of weeks and now, but all the projects that we're doing are kind of at the tail end now. We have the unique circumstance of kind of building our own content. So we're ramping up on our podcast production because we're seeing listenership go up now on our podcast. Some other things are going really well with that. We're about to join a big network and all that stuff, but it's my key thing that I'm always kind of beating down is just to make stuff and start putting it out there. And thankfully, I think that, if we can make it through this, it's because of that original piece of content that we made 3.5 years ago for insurance purposes that we're still kicking down the road here. So I would encourage everybody to, if you're going to keep the staff, I have no plans on any immediate lowering of staff because we can keep busy with all this stuff. But I would encourage everyone to start making stuff and putting it out there because there's a lot of people who are eating that stuff up right now.
Well, that's cool. Thanks for sharing that note because it's good just to hear from the trenches, from the actual clients. We're trying to maintain business as usual. That's way different than we've put everyone on notice. We've extended everyone to net 60, net 90, et cetera. So thanks for sharing that. I was going to also just mention real quick, this comment from Mark, you just dropped a comment here that said, should animators and motion designers take advantage of this time? Most of our work can be done remotely with remote artists. I wonder if this might be an advantage play for us versus live action. maybe, but I would just be cautious that you don't look like you're taking advantage. I mean, obviously you want to step up and solve problems and help people where they're at. There's a thread happening inside Slack where we were talking about this. So the guys from Kingdom of Something and I were having a chat about that. So we might want to continue that thread there inside the 7 ingredients. Tim, where are we at on time?
We have about 10 minutes, 5 minutes left here. Let's see if we can wrap this up just as a little round robin. Maybe each one of us can give some key pieces of advice to how to deal with this time and that feeling of making these harder decisions. I think I'll start off with just the idea of let's be strategic, but not panic, so that we can think through the scenarios. And that's just being proactive. Don't feel guilty about thinking through your scenarios, but don't panic thinking you have to drop everyone right away or the sky is falling. As Dallas encouraged us, there are things that are still happening within parts of the industry and things that are relevant. Clearly, as Mark brought up, there are things that are also happening in segments like live action. They're dealing with different pieces. And like we know, we're going to deal with that in a couple of minutes. So be strategic, but don't panic. That would be the beginning of my advice. How about you, Marcel?
I love what Tim just said here. Don't worry, guys. It's a shit globally. Love from London. That's exactly what I was going to say. It's like that everywhere. So it's okay to feel that way. My advice here would be gauge. It's like pretty much if you're doing outreach to your clients, it's easy to understand the problem, understand, what the situation is, and then from there, you're going to create your plan of action, So it's not just like, it's okay to feel desperate and like worried and like concerned and shame, all that stuff. It's fine. But what I'm saying is like, maybe funnel that into the gauging approach. It's like you reaching out to gauge what's out there. What's the new situation?
Yeah, great.
So you want me to share one little piece from me, Tim?
Yeah, great.
I can share a story because just an hour ago, I was on a weekly call with a client, and we made this tough decision called, should we let this employee go? And one partner, the owner, was saying, no, I don't want to do this. Emotionally, I feel bad about it. And the other partner, who's a spouse, was saying, no, we need to do this. And I'll just say this, that I said, if we went back a month ago and I told you 1 month from today, all your projects, because this studio, every project got put on hold and they have no new projects coming in. They have one thing out to bid. That's it. I said, if I told you a month ago that was going to happen, what would you have done? And he said, oh, well, yeah, if I'd known then I would have said to this employee, hey, at that time, I'm going to need to switch you to freelance. And I said, well, see, if you take the emotion out of it, you realize it's really the right thing to do. And this person is a grown up. They will understand. It's not fun. It's not easy. But be gracious, make some tough choices. But remember, don't get stuck in this analysis paralysis of all the news and all the emotion. So you have to sort of step back and just say, if I had all this information a week or 2 or 3 weeks ago, what would I have done, and make those decisions today.
Yeah, I like that. It goes back to just thinking through what the practical realities are. Don't be afraid of being a business owner. Stepping up as leadership are really important. And it's not selfish. We know that many of us business owners are processing things in real time, and we have others in mind while we do it. It might not always be perceived that way, but we want you to know that we understand and other business owners understand what you are going through. And those are all the work and efforts we need to put out every day. So let me just wrap this up with maybe a couple of small thoughts that I don't think anyone's really addressing, but I want people to consider. Just think right now, take the time right now and think through what's going to happen when somebody or somebody at your workplace tests positive for COVID-19. I want you to recognize that person did nothing wrong. They're not out there doing extreme harm. They aren't spreading some deadly disease intentionally or committing some crime, but they caught a virus. The viruses that we catch year after year after year. This one is known and is causing more havoc, but that's what's happening. I want you to think through what it's going to be like when you deal with that moment so that you can work on that right now so you can show grace when necessary. And then my expectation is that you are a leader in that company, and the way you react is how other people will perceive what's right and wrong. So I want you to think about what it's going to be like to be a leader in that position, to give other people comfort and not project shame or frustration or anger or guilt on a person who did nothing wrong. They simply just got a virus, like we get viruses every year. I also want you to know that we know that you are people. You have to go to work. Some of you have to go to work, and I want you to feel okay with driving to work, doing what you need to and coming home. I would like people to start thinking about what it means to have engagements that are safety practices, and knowing that you can trust other people, that they're keeping themselves safe, and you're keeping yourself safe, so you can go have an engagement and have a conversation and do work in the workplace and have like the promise that everyone's doing the best they can and no one's going to infect the overall company intentionally. So with all of us doing the best we can at home, let's use that goodwill to know that we can do things together. And lastly, this on the light note, I think we need a song. I feel like this epidemic needs a theme song. So over the next couple of days, let's figure out like what the song's going to be. There's something like in the 1970s, it feels like is the era that we're going to draw this from. But let's find that theme song for this pandemic that we can all relate to, know that it's going to speak the words we need to, and appreciate this. And there goes Alex right there. He's like, if you like drinking pina coladas, is the very first version of it. Let's just throw that song suggestions in the Slack channel, in the welcome channel. Dallas, this is right up your alley. Let's find us some good songs and get out there. But let's just do that together. I will survive. Oh no, I started. I started it already. Under pressure. I love it. This is great. Maybe we just need 2 minutes. Okay. Hey, why don't you let's wrap this up and say thank you all for joining us for this daily brief. We are going to record this. We'll put this online if you missed it. It will be on our podcast also if you want to listen to it. We're going to shift gears slightly to talk about live action. But in the next 2 minutes, if you guys want to keep throwing up song suggestions in the Slack channel for the next 2 minutes, I'm simply just going to stand up because I've been sitting down for a little bit. I'll be back in a minute and a half, and we'll start talking about the live action group. We are going to change the format of this where that we'll have the Q&A open, and we will bring people on camera. And we want to hear what's going on with live action. We are going to try to work together to find some possible strategies for you live action groups. But let's just give me 30 seconds, if you don't mind.
Okay, cool.
If you want to do a song and dance too.
Yeah, I'll do a little song and dance. There's actually a Q&A that Gaston dropped into the chat here, which I'll talk about. But for those, I don't know if you guys can see the Q&A or if only I can see it. I'm going to click on Answer Live. So it says, hi, we've been experiencing an increasing demand for some urgent delivery of unscheduled pieces for TV networks that are not able to produce in-house, some promos that communicate programming changes, new events they are planning for the next 2 weeks. In case, as a studio, are you able to respond to this demand while your team is working remotely? What would be the right ethical approach as an account manager to get on board with this kind of projects? When I mean approach, a quotation. Well, it sounds like they're looking for some urgent delivery, and usually the answer that most of us would go to is rush charges, hiring freelancers, getting a change order, getting a quotation. I think my question, I would just kind of go back to, don't be opportunistic, but at the same time, you do have real costs and real expenses against those projects. So to me, it's an opportunity to have a deeper question with the client to say, hey, I'm happy to help you through this. Let's see how we can help each other through this time, and use it as an opportunity to have a deeper conversation about the relationship between your two companies. I think that's where my head goes. But Tim, you're already back, so.
I'm already back. Thank you for letting me. I just need to fill up a glass of water.
Okay.
So, thank you. Joel, that was great advice, by the way. I think the thought of price gouging right now, maybe their thought is like you should just feel lucky that you have some work coming in, and I don't want to go that way because obviously it's well-deserved work. But the thought that you could just step up and meet the needs of your client. In one of the Slack channels, Joel, I kind of mentioned the idea of like, let's think about the value pyramid and providing solutions and strategy over just services, this is that moment, because you don't necessarily have all of your services up and running, but you have a certain expertise that your clients could leverage and get this stuff done. Be willing to step up into those higher value conversations.
Yeah, and we'll do a talk about that whole value pyramid concept tomorrow in that live stream that we'll do. So for anyone that I just dropped another reminder in the channel here in the Slack. Sorry, not in the Slack. In the Zoom chat, I'll drop another reminder with that link. So we'll get into that. Basically, that idea of when things get crazy, maybe it's time for you to step down the value pyramid and not be so hung up on, we only offer these premium strategies, but maybe you need to step down and offer some services and sometimes even some commodities.